They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Coming up on Life with Brian.
I realised that that generation that was sort of maybe born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was like we took nothing seriously, especially ourselves.
It's so fucking ridiculous that nobody would know, really, outside certain countries that Jobby is a Jobby.
Yeah. I thought any therapy would be me sat on a couch with some weird Sigmund Freud bloke asking me if I fancied my mum.
Hello, it's Mark here with Matthew and, of course, Man United and Celtic legend Brian McClare with another episode of Life with Brian. I pointedly referred to you as a legend, Brian, because you were at Celtic Park at the weekend managing a Celtic Legends team against a team from Manchester United led by your old teammate Brian Robson. Now, as thrilling as the football was, I'm sure our listeners would much rather hear about the after party rather than the match itself. So did anyone get pissed and make an ass of themselves?
Not as far as I'm aware, but then I was at the Celtic party because I was in that dugout and I was part of the management team of Tom Boyd and Tosh McKinley. And it was a very pleasant little party after that. I don't know, the United lads decided not to go. But I know that there's quite a few of the older heads or whatever, they went home. I think the younger ones went out. But Brian Robson and Darren Fletcher and Michael Carrick all returned home to see their children. So I think that's more. I think Robert wanted a lift for some other reason, so I didn't get to see any of those ones after, so it was very nice and thoroughly enjoyable day altogether, a lot of money, of course, raised for charity, and the best part of it though is, even though I didn't know that many of the Celtic legends, I was going in between each dressing room and just listening to people chatting. It was nice to see the likes of the ex-kitman Albert Morgan, and he's telling me all the stuff that's happening or not happening at Carrington at the moment, the new training facility and all that, and then seeing some people that I'd played with and shared some rooms with, Raymond van der Hull, for example. And it was interesting when I was getting something signed, and I've got the Celtic kit on and all that. And Louis Sahar looks up and he just looks, and he looks again and goes, "Fucking hell. I didn't recognise you." And I went, "Well, this is me tidy, actually. I've actually made an effort for this particular game, And then I was outside, Berbatov was outside, and I've got all the Celtic kit on. And I just said, "Hello, you all right?" And he just looked at me kind of strangely. I went, "Hi, well, hello." And then when I went back in again, he came over, "I'm sorry, I did not recognise you. I thought it might have been you, but I thought, no, it can't possibly be you." So nice little moments that they actually recognise me anyway, never mind that underneath this cunning disguise. But good day.
They obviously haven't been reading all those tabloid articles about how unrecognisable you are these days, Brian.
I'm sure they've got other things to do rather than that.
I did wonder why you were wearing your identification lanyard around your neck for the whole game. Maybe that's why, and just in case anybody wondered why you were on the bench.
I just put the kit on, and then I put that on, and then you just forget about what you're having. It's like, because none of it would be a problem for me, because everybody that walks at Celtic knows who I am. So they tend to know what all the ex-players look like. So they all knew who I was anyway, so I needed to. It was quite refreshing to go in, because the Celtic kit man who I'd never met before was telling me that the United kit man, Albert, who I did know, had been hammering me for that whole period, So I quite liked that Albert was, whatever he was saying, because he would never say it to my face. So I'm quite glad that he was actually saying something, So good day. Yeah, nice to see. But the banter in the dressing room's brilliant. Just listening to that, So really.
Brendan Rodgers is under pressure at the minute. You were on the Celtic bench at the weekend. Maybe there's a chance of you could make that role a little bit more permanent.
What? Just sitting on the bench as a job?
Chatting to the kit man.
Good stuff. Okay, our guest this time around is a writer and broadcaster who not only forms one half of the brilliant Top Flight Time Machine podcast, amongst many other things, he's also been editor-in-chief at Heat Magazine, Comedy Central UK, and he writes extensively about mental health. We're very pleased to be joined by Sam Delaney. How are you, Sam?
I'm good, thanks, and I'm honoured to be here, lads. Thanks for having me.
Well, firstly, regular listeners will remember that we had your TFTM partner, Andy Dawson, on the show earlier this year. Has he just forgotten to warn you off or something?
I haven't told him. We don't communicate at all outside of the podcast because we do so many podcasts. We do like 5 a week that we just there is zero communication between us about anything else in our lives. I don't know where he lives. I don't know what he does. I don't know anything about his family. He's the same about me. It's the secret of a happy marriage.
Yeah. You get in separate cars after you're recording.
Absolutely, yeah, like Jagger and Richards.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just with regards to that, Sam, because I was listening to your Sunday night episode yesterday morning, and I've been threatened all day yesterday, all night, and all this morning, and wondering whether your daughter actually got into the house.
She did get in. I can't remember how, but yeah, I was saying on the podcast, like, it's one of the many things that her generation just deem like normal things to us that they deem to be absurd, almost like affectations. And one of them is keys. You go, you got your keys? And they look at you like, what? What are you talking about? What? It's not the 90s. What? I don't walk around with keys in my pocket. Yeah, but you're going to need them at some point. No, I'll get in somehow. Come on, no one uses keys anymore. So, yeah, she'll just text. But, you know, she'll come in late now. She's 18. She'll go out to a club and the keys aren't a priority for her. So she'll come home and think, oh, it's fine. I'll just text them. And so in the end, or I'll call them and one of them will just get up and answer the door. Unbelievable.
You need to get a hidden key. You'll just need to get an electronic system that works or using a phone, won't you? Just it's a little app on a phone and that opens the front door.
I mean, I must say, I can sort of
makes the bed and all that as well.
I can sort of see their perspective, like in the age we live in where there's an app for everything, everything's so digital and streamlined. I suppose the idea of like a sort of a jagged metal like item that you slot into something and turn seems sort of impossibly sort of medieval to young people. And I suppose it is strange that we have not yet arrived at a time when doors open with eye scans or something similar.
Very easy to lose as well, aren't they? That's the thing. I mean,
yeah,
potential. Yeah,
I keep mine on a piece of string around my neck.
Sam, you're a big West Ham fan.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because as I understand it, your brothers support a variety of other London clubs, so I can imagine that that brings out some added spice in the sibling relationship.
Yeah, it does. There's 4 of us. I grew up with 3 older brothers in a single parent home, and it did lead to, you can imagine it was very sort of raucous anyway. And the fact that we all supported different teams, yeah, really did extend that at times. We now rub along all right because we sort of developed a policy many years ago of not really winding each other up because it would escalate so quickly and so violently that we knew the stakes were too high. But yeah, I mean, we grew up in West London, so I spent the early part of my life on an estate in Brentford, right near Griffin Park. So really, that should have been my team. My oldest brother, there's quite a big gap between me and my brothers. I'm the youngest by a 7-year gap, but my oldest brother supports Spurs. Then I've got another brother who supports West Ham, same as me, and then the third one supports Queen's Park Rangers, who are also sort of more of a local side to us. But I kind of I didn't have that dad influence. I mean, my dad was on the scene, so to speak. I did see him at weekends, but I never lived with him, so I didn't have that big daily influence where dad said, "You've got to support who I support." But I had my best friend who lived on this estate in Brentford. He lives next door to me. His name was Alex Jones, and his dad was called Malcolm, and his dad was from Bethnal Green and was quite the character, sort of like the big dog on our estate. Very, very sort of a touch of the Mike Reeds about him in EastEnders, sort of a charismatic wide boy from East London who drove a sports car and was a bit of a tough guy. And Yeah, I mean, I fell in with this family because they lived next door, and Alex was my best mate, and they were West Ham nuts. And so I just went along with that. And we started school together, the local school together, where everyone didn't support West Ham. Most people in those days supported like Liverpool. There's, and then obviously there was Tottenham fans, a few Chelsea fans, etc. And we walked in supporting West Ham on our first day and just stuck together. And then weirdly converted a few other mates, some of whom I'm still friends with, like mates from primary school who I still go to West Ham with today.
But as a West Ham fan, then, I think you should maybe owe Brian an apology, because if memory serves me right, you cost him 2 league title medals.
Yeah, there was 2, wasn't there, Brian? I mean, there was the one, I remember the one I was at both games. I can't remember the years. I suppose one was...
I can. 91, 92.
One was 91, 92, and it was Leeds, wasn't it? And
yeah.
And Kenny Brown, who still works for the club, he works in the academy. He's Ken Brown's son, and he never scored. He was a right back. I think it might have been the only goal he ever scored. Yeah. But that was a backs to the wall operation at Upton Park, and we won 1-0, even though we were in a relegation dogfight. I think we went down anyway. So that must have been frustrating. And then it was a tremendous atmosphere that night at Upton Park. And then, of course, the next one was 95 with Blackburn Rovers, where Ludek McGlasgow played the game of his life. Did you start in both those games, Brian?
Yes.
Well,
the one thing that I always think of you'll obviously remember Andy Cole going through a couple of times on goal, and McCloskey saved his shots, but there was one where Brian was unmarked on the 6-yard line, and had he just slid it across to you, Brian, I think
just rolled it to the side,
yeah, and I know for a fact you wouldn't have missed, but horrible memories for you, I take it.
No, but when you look back on them, they don't tend to be horrible memories now. At the time, it was painful, of course, particularly when the first occasion when you're so close to winning your first league title, and the first league title for Manchester United for such a long time. But sometimes those games become more memorable because of the emotion and the event. And as you say, Sam, I've got a great fondness for all the old away grounds, So I didn't play in many of the new stadiums. That's something that kind of just started, Probably the first one I recall, I'm not even sure I played there, was Derby County, So going to all the great memories of going to those different places. I don't know when the first time you were fortunate enough to go to the bowling ground, but I had lots of great moments. And then that kind of thing where it's that cute and quaint. There's a little thing there about it, there's that quaintness about the bubbles, isn't there? So it's like... I
think there's a funny juxtaposition at West Ham, the old West Ham at Upton Park in those days, between the fact that it had the fan base had this sort of menacing reputation, and it could be in a very intimidating place, but at the same time, our song is about blowing pretty bubbles in the air. And we literally do blow bubbles. So there's a nice sort of juxtaposition between the seemingly menacing and the sort of childishness of it. I think that's quite a funny element of West Ham, but very different now. None of that exists. I mean, I first went
too far away from the pitch.
Yeah, it's awful. I went in 1984 was my first game with some friends and their dad and my mate's dad. It was his birthday celebration, and we went along. And we beat Newcastle 2-0. But I have to say that it was that point which it went from being like, I like West Ham. I've got a West Ham poster on my wall, to being, I'm hooked here. And it was because of Upton Park. It was because of the atmosphere inside and outside the ground. I think I got hooked on that. And just started going regularly after that. And now I take my son, who's 13. I've been season ticket for like over 30 years, and he comes with me. But it's generally speaking quite an awful match day experience. West Ham were rubbish for most of the time we were at Upton Park, but at least it was a fun day out. Well, we're rubbish and it's not a fun day out.
I was going to say that. I mean, I was at that 95 game where West Ham cost United the league, and the atmosphere that day, I mean, anyone at that ground, almost knew what was coming, because West Ham was so up for it. They had nothing to play for, unlike the 92 season, but they had their heart set on stopping United winning that league, and the atmosphere was so ferocious. And I think that played a big part in it. I mean, Brian would tell me because he was on the pitch, but it felt like they were just desperate to stop United winning the league, even though they didn't really have a dog in the fight. Whereas I wonder what would happen these days if a team went to the London Stadium looking for a win to win the league. I think they'd probably just roll over.
It wouldn't be possible.
I had the two different experiences really at Upton Park, because of always the same when we went there about the crowd and the atmosphere and that slight malevolence, particularly being so close to the pitch and the bit behind the goal having quite a low roof, so you had all of that kind of thing where you really could feel all that kind of thing, but of the home support. But the other thing as well, I played in Bobby Moore's testimonial there, and that was a brilliant night as well.
Oh yeah,
so I was part of that group that did that.
During that era, the thing about the Manchester United games, because I don't regard Manchester United now is not really regarded by West Ham fans as like a real grudge match. And it was in that era. And I'm trying to remember why there was such a big atmosphere around it. And there's a couple of reasons. One, of course, Manchester United were becoming so preeminent that it was just that everyone wants to slay a giant. And obviously, Brian, you would face that every single ground every week. There was also just West Ham kind of regard themselves as a cocky upstart, and it's that sort of like don't want to be looked down on by anyone, so it's like the fans in particular want to take a big glamorous scalp. But the other factor, Brian, that was huge for us was the Paul Ince factor.
Yeah.
West Ham have had a few nemesis over the years of me supporting West Ham, and no doubt Mohamed Kudus will become the next one after this summer, but I don't think anyone really compared to the level of hatred there was during that era for Paul Ince. And I don't know what it was like for you guys or whether it bothered you or touched you or not, but there were certain games at Upton Park. He might have been gone by the time of that 95 match, actually. He might have been in... No, maybe he was still there. I think he left that summer, didn't he? But the Paul Ince factor was huge, and most people were turning out and generating that atmosphere for him and him alone, really.
So does that continue now? So when he's been recently done for drink driving, were you celebrating?
But the thing is, West Ham fans are very like. I don't know if you remember the characters, the Self-Righteous Brothers that Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse used to do. Yeah. There's a lot of West Ham fans who are like that. It must be an East End thing, right? And so we're very keen to establish like huge grudges against individuals. So although Paul Ince is probably the most fierce I remember in my lifetime, it moves on quick. So then, obviously Frank Lampard's a huge one. Jermaine Defoe was for a while. And now it's like Mohamed Kudus. So I don't think people are keeping a close eye on Paul Ince anymore. The funny thing is about Paul Ince is he grew up a West Ham fan. Like Frank Lampard, these are lads who grew up in the East End and were big West Ham fans. I remember he used to occasionally goad West Ham fans when he moved to Italy, and he'd be on that Sunday afternoon show with James Richardson, and he'd interview him in his home while he was playing for Inter Milan or whatever. And he'd just be casually sipping a cup of tea from a West Ham mug, which I really respected him for, because I knew it was a pre-internet form of trolling the West Ham fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, you wouldn't do that now. There'd be some press agent saying, you can't do that, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But we had Irving Welsh on a couple of episodes ago, and he's got a soft spot for West Ham, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've been into him there sometimes.
And one of the things we spoke about was he loved the sort of underdog mentality of West Ham, and saying he might have won that Conference League a couple of years ago, which made probably the biggest night in the club's modern history. But is there part of you that doesn't like that and prefers the days when you're stopping United winning the league or giving Paul Ince abuse,
yeah, but it was the Conference League, so it was a suitable thing for us to win, because we could win it and then we can sing West Ham are massive everywhere we go.
Champions of Europe, I think you called it.
Champions of Europe, West Ham are massive. That's perfect. And a lot of fans, especially younger ones, don't pick up on the humour or the irony in all of that and become irate at the idea that we're describing ourselves as champions of Europe. But to me, that fits in perfectly with the West Ham tradition of being an underdog, kind of knowing we're rubbish, and reveling in it and being passionate in any case. I mean, I think, there's some pride in that as well. We're underdogs. We've all seen relegations. We've all seen indignities and disasters on the pitch and outside. And, we're like still there having fun. And that's the problem with supporting West Ham these days. It's a lot less fun. It used to be that, there was a sort of a gallows humour about supporting a team who were traditionally a bit shit, but had this very passionate support anyway, and the odd moment of joy to elevate you. But I think it was just, if we ever won the Champions League, I often think there's quite a good relationship between West Ham and Manchester City fans. There always has been. It's a strange thing there, but there's always been a kind of a mutual respect. Part of it came from being traditionally the underdog team in your large city. Yeah. And I often think, I don't know what it must feel like if you've been a City fan for as long as I've been a West Ham fan. It must feel strange. It basically must feel like a totally different club you're following. And fair play. I'm not saying they should stop following them, but it's not the same, is it?
Yeah, I think if West Ham ever win the Champions League, you and Irving Welsh will have to
I'll have to look elsewhere. Yeah.
Can you possibly clarify exactly what the West Ham way is? Because it's kind of ethereal notion that I heard about for 40 odd years without any real evidence of what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's a phrase that got only popularised really like a few years ago. A couple of people started saying it during the Sam Allardyce era because Sam Allardyce obviously has a particular brand of football that he likes to play that's entirely pragmatic, often quite successful. We had some good times under him, but very tedious to watch. And someone used that phrase and it caught on a bit because what they were trying to say is it's all very well Sam Allardyce got us promoted and whatnot, but we're all miserable because this is boring to watch. And West Ham were never about winning by any means necessary. That's not what we're here for. If we wanted kind of success, there's a bunch of other teams in London who are going to deliver success more. We're here to watch entertaining football, passion and fun. And what you've given us is a complete pragmatist. And West Ham have never been pragmatic because pragmatism is boring, right? So I think that's what someone was trying to express. But the media, and I worked at TalkSport for years, so I know precisely what the MO is there. TalkSport love this stuff because they can jump on it and say, well, this is West Ham fans bigging themselves up and trying to say that their club is some special romantic thing. It's not really. It's that we kind of aren't bothered about pragmatism. So when club owners put us in a soulless athletic stadium or hire a manager like Sam Allardyce, they're kind of misunderstanding what the priorities of the fans are. Which is to, if you're doing these things because you think these are the things that are needed to one day elevate us to the status of Manchester United or Chelsea or whatever, then don't worry about it. That's not what we want. We want to come and have fun, watch entertaining football in an atmospheric environment, and to hell with winning or losing. And that probably is what someone meant. But I know that people use it as a tool to suggest that we're all slightly precious about playing exotic football, which we're not. But I defy any of you to sit through 3 seasons of Sam Allardyce football and not got the ump.
I can give you for me talking about West Ham in particular. I can give you a few moments in time that I would say was the West Ham way. Was when after it would be probably 81, you won the cup in 80, didn't you?
Yeah.
So 81 Cup Winners' Cup. Now there was loads of games and those things there. I really liked Alan Devonshire as a player, watching him. So, but that way that West Ham played those games, if you can recall, I was really a young kid, maybe looking bad at him. That was for me. So I would say would be the West Ham way, was winning, being down, winning games and playing exciting football. I thought that was brilliant of that West Ham team in that particular time. What I feel is missing certainly from Manchester United and maybe West Ham, when you're talking about the employment of someone to be to look after your football club for whatever period of time, is that somebody should be there as a custodian of the house style, right?
Yeah.
So this is what West Ham fans want. entertained, right? Arsenal fans maybe 1-0 to the Arsenal, right? Spurs might be whatever that is, Manchester United, City. And when you've been at places and you've played for them and you've coached the different things, you can understand what that is and what the expectation is. So there's teams in Holland, for example, that would rather get beat 5-4 than win 1-0. Because the supporters are going along, like you've said, and I've heard you in lots of different things. It's an event. You can go with your friends. You can meet people there. Previously, when it was the Upton Park, there were a lot more places probably to go than there is.
Yeah.
Well, not more places. I know there's places in, but it has its identity and its soul itself. That area where Bowling Ground was, right? And I think it's the same thing, and very much with for me with Manchester United. I supported Manchester United since the early 70s, and it's been amazing that I've been able to play for them. And Celtic, they have a distinctive way of playing. West Ham as well, it'd be allied to attacking football, and that you're going to score more goals than the opposition. And there should be someone there who insists that's the case. You know, I've heard, I've listened to people who have been in had job interviews with Dutch teams, because they have that. They have an identity of how they play, and all their teams are based on, and all their players know, and the young players know in the academies what position they may well play, because it's all based on numbers, not just the right back, left back, centre back, but they'll have the numbers, and they'll all be different, as in different types of player. But they have an identity that runs from the start of the academy, be it 12 or 8, all the way through first team, and that's something that they're not willing to at all, because they know that that's what the supporters want. And I think that's something that's happened to Manchester United. Various different guys since Alex Ferguson retired, similar kind of thing. I think a lot of people coach teams to play how they play, or an image of what they is. So I think defenders are very negative in that they want to get teams to defend. So maybe that was one of the reasons why, although successful at the times with West Ham, that David Moyes wasn't going to be, because he's similar to that Sam Allardyce, a defender. You know, he's similar to that, you know. So when Moyes comes to United, the same kind of thing. And it's kind of been the thing all the way through, that somebody's steady been understanding that it's supposed to be entertaining. And it doesn't matter which way it's entertaining, you know, if it's 1-0 wins and the football's terrible, that's not. And you say that if you're going to watch Sam Allardyce team at a stadium that you're not enjoying anyway, it's going to make it more of a turgid event when it should be a celebration. And it's something that's in control of by the people who own. They're the only ones that can say, the people who own the club. But if they're turning around and they're saying they are supporters of a particular club, or they become supporters of a particular club, that's one of the things for me that should be clear, and it's clear for. Here it is. You can get the job. You're playing this way. Don't play this way. Well, if you're talking about, like, say, we use Ruben Amorim at United, so absolutely hell bent on continuing to go with the system that he's done, that nobody else virtually in Europe's doing, and it's certainly completely alien to Manchester United, and it maybe it's lent itself to football that is unattractive. Yeah. He shouldn't. If somebody thinks he's the best young coach for whatever reason, he should be told that this is how Manchester United play, not him telling Manchester United how they play. And maybe that's the same for. I think that may be the same for a lot of teams, really.
I think there are parallels this season. Yeah, Graham Potter actually employs what I think is a similar system, or has tried, with 3 at the back and wing backs, and it's very possession based, and that can be quite boring to watch as well. And I think I think there were similarities in as much as these are coaches who think that they take their brand of football. When you buy them, you buy an identity, and they come in and apply what they're already doing to your club, and they won't shift from that. And that's the problem that Amorim seems to be having at Manchester United. Potter, I think, because he felt his job was seriously on the line, and he can probably afford to lose a job a lot less than Amorim can, because Amorim would probably get a job elsewhere in Europe quite easily. He switched actually in our last game to 4 at the back under a huge amount of pressure, and we won 3-0. But I do think there's coaches. I saw it in Vincent Kompany when he took Burnley up then down, in that he wanted to stick to an identity of football that he thought would reflect on him as a coach and get him his next job, even though Burnley might have had a better chance of staying up had he been slightly more pragmatic or adapted the way he played. But he wanted them to play this possession-based game, so they got relegated, and he went and got his job at Bayern Munich anyway. So there's managers with egos, isn't there, who kind of think this is my way or the highway, and which is fine. But it means that perhaps owners need to pick more carefully and think who's going to be a fit for this club. A lot of people said our last two managerial appointments, which was Julian Lopetegui after Moyes and then Graham Potter, although they had records of some success elsewhere, they didn't seem fit personality-wise or tactically-wise to a team like West Ham. So I think you're right. You know, you need to be super aware of a team's traditions and cultures.
You're listening to Life with Brian.
I'm getting better now, but a lot of the time I realise I'm waiting until I drink again. That's how I sort of judge my life in terms of periods between drinking.
I don't know what this meat festival thing is everyone's always on about. I don't understand it. No.
I think there's a real reason behind that that's not that. But he's made that up because we know he's going to make up about slipping in dog piss. There must be something even worse in reality.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Top Flight Time Machine has been a big hit, but far from clinging to the football nostalgia and comedy theme, which has been a well-worn path thanks to the likes of the Quickly Kevin podcast and others, you and Andy have become far more tangential than that over the years. Was that deliberate or a happy accident?
No, it's just happy accident, to be honest. We started doing it. We'd had an idea for a TV show called Big Match Time Machine. When the big match at the time I had a production company that is long since dead, but at the time I had a sort of reasonably kind of busy production company that made TV, and Andy came to us and said, why don't you make a show that is like a sister program to the ITV4 reruns of the big match? And I thought, yeah, it's a brilliant idea, right? For men of our generation. So you're sitting back being nostalgic and watching the clips. So I said, call it Big Match Time Machine, because there was that film out at the time called Hot Tub Time Machine. And anyway, it got knocked back because ITV was short-sighted. And then Andy said we should do it as a podcast instead, but we'll call it Top Flight, because the Premier League might sue us if we use the term Premier League. And a good job we did call it Top Flight, because it meant that when we get bored easily, particularly me, but we're both like that, and we end up sort of like steering, even though we're both lifelong football fans, we sometimes just get bored talking about it. So as soon as we started veering off into more obscure areas of conversation on tangents, we enjoyed it more. And we've always both been guided by what we enjoy talking about, as opposed to any feedback we get from the audience. And that's really liberating, because we're both kind of career creatives, me mainly as a journalist. Andy's worked across TV and radio writing and stuff like that. And whatever we've done, you're always kind of answering to someone about, you know, the shape your content should get. So even, you know, when I had shows on the radio, you always have to fit into that bit, like what the phrase you just used, Brian, house style, you know, what you can say, what you can't say, what the audience want, what they don't want. It was so nice after all the years of considering those sorts of things when you're working, to just think, I don't give a shit what the audience want. I'm just going to do whatever I find funny, but more importantly, whatever because I'm needy and I like to get laughs out of, so especially someone who's quite difficult to impress like Andy. That's catnip to me, because Andy is quite grumpy and cynical. He's also very, very funny, and like, therefore it's really exciting to me when I amuse him. And I just followed that instinct, and in the end, we started talking less and less about football, and we found that more and more enjoyable. And luckily, a sufficient number of people enjoy listening to that for us to have turned it into something that, earns us a bit of money. But our secret was to ignore all feedback, or just have no interest in what anyone thought other than each other.
Well, that's something we can definitely drink to, I think, on this show.
Yeah.
Two of your recurring themes are the book Odysseys, where you dissect autobiographies of Roy Keane and Kevin Keegan. Do you have a favourite out of the two?
Yeah, I think when we did the Roy Keane book, it was like it was where the podcast seemed to really take off. Like, it had already, built a little bit of a following. I think it was 2018 when we started it. And then when we decided, let's, I think one of us, maybe me, I'd said, I'm reading this book, we should just get stuck into it. And Andy said, well, do a deep dive over 3 episodes. But I think it turned into like 20 or more. Because there was just so much in there. His second one in particular, his second book was the one he did with Roddy Doyle. And that one, the first one he did with Eamon Dunphy, but the second one's with Roddy Doyle. And there's a lot in there, and he's extremely open and vulnerable. Roddy Doyle's obviously done a very good job of opening him up. Of course, now Roy Keane, you see him on telly, he's very aware of his own persona. And I find, I don't know what you make of it, Brian, but I find occasionally he's playing up to it because he knows what we all want from him, which is him to be extremely damning and grumpy and overly earnest about stuff. But back then, I think that it was like he still seemed pretty repressed about it. And but I have to thank Roddy Doyle really for bringing out so many funny things about his plethora of strange and intense resentments that he expressed in this book. We just found so entertaining. And then, as we do with all of the things we deep dive, in the end, again, just to make each other laugh, we start doing our own characterizations around the characters, which is something we also do when we do a lot of stuff. We do a whole series about Roy the Rovers, and we've created kind of alternate characterizations and personas for all of the characters in Roy the Rovers. And we kind of did that for Roy Keane and just went down weird tangents and, sort of, I can't even remember how, but we got it into our heads that he was obsessed with Professor Yaffle out of Bagpuss and that Professor Yaffle haunted his dreams and that he thought he was real and was always on the lookout for him and regarded him as a nemesis. So just weird stuff, really. That all comes just from, we've never planned or scripted anything in any podcast we've ever done. It's always by following, keep pushing things into stranger territories. Always, in my case at least, I don't know what Andy would say. In my case at least, I'm always just trying to make Andy laugh. And so I'll just try and go down stranger or weirder avenues to do so.
Do you think that's a fair perception of your old mate, Roy Keane, Brian?
Well, I think that's like Sam says, and I guess it's kind of relative to a lot of things you've said about men and talking. Sam, I'm feeling comfortable talking. I think that it's maybe even more concentrated in, certainly in football, their experiences that he didn't mention anything about anything outside. But he did the opposite. You were kind of slagging each other off about what would be a perceived weakness, i.e. maybe saying something about somebody had an issue with something that might be to do with whatever it was, I mean, it's the thing I've listened to you talking about one of your things, Stan Collymore, probably the first big name that was asking for some time off and got no sympathy from at the time. Gregory was the manager of Villa.
Gregory, I remember that. Yeah.
So and then how relevant, well, it was just would not be something out of the ordinary at all now. And I'm sure there's several cases. I think you're talking about what you're saying there about with Roy Keane. He felt second book, maybe that was at the time where, I don't know when that was, whether he was still at United or not then. But
I think he might have left, and that's maybe why
I think that was maybe why he felt that he was like, I think he was, and I don't think anything's changed with the fact of how aggrieved he felt about why that decision got made about his departure from Manchester United, and you can see that now continuing because he will be quite comfortable. He won't say anything positive about Alex Ferguson, but he keeps picking up things that that he thinks that Alex Ferguson might get annoyed at, so that he's the best manager he played under was Brian Clough or whatever, you know. So, and I think then I think early on when he did Sky, I think that was very much him doing what he would always do. But because people enjoyed it so much, I think he's encouraged by the producers or directors or whatever of the programs to play that bit up. And I think that's maybe you can see that in all the kind of characters. But Roy's he's there as the bad one, isn't he? The one that's going to really, and the other ones are afraid of him. Whether they're afraid or not, I don't know. But he can be kind of scary and really nice, and he's got that in 1 minute to the next. You had no idea what you're going to get, you know.
But when he joined, like, he was very young from Forest, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So was he confident and had all that about him, a little bit menacing when he walked into a room with people like you and Brian Robson and Mark Hughes?
I think that you're always confident in your own ability. That the other part of it is you find your way. You know, so he preferred to not that we all socialised with each other because we all had our own kind of friends groups and all that kind of thing. But Roy was very gravitated to the younger ones as well. So he was like that, and indeed, even some of the younger ones who eventually would become first team players. But he felt more comfortable. I don't even know if he would go and sit in there. I can't remember, but I know he was and still is very friendly with a lot of them. You know, the younger players. But you always find a way, and the best way of doing that has been performing on the pitch. And he was a very good football player, and you could see that both in his training and in the games and the performances. And you grow into that. Once anybody that he may well have been a wee bit wary of eventually are go, you know. So we all our careers come to an end at Manchester United, and he becomes the dominant character or one of the dominant characters, and he's convinced, or he feels that he's right about many things, like people are when they're in a sort of maybe in a position of power or influence. You know, it's very. I think that the challenge of anybody managing or becoming a kind of manager in any discipline is having that, being able to step back and see your own faults and your own flaws with regards to this idea that you're omnipotent or omniscient, you know. And maybe Roy's never have to do that, but he's never been afraid to say that because he's not really bothered about any. He's not really that bothered about it, but he is. I think his analysis of the game is very good, and it's good. It's great to see. I think good for anybody to see somebody that's actually annoyed about some particular things. But even within that, you can see little things in bits and pieces, you know. So he hammers Erling Haaland, you know, he hammers him. He says he makes score goals. He's never a football player, never whatever else it is. Look at this, a touch of this, and look at that. Particularly when he's not had a very influential, he's not scored, you know.
Yeah,
and that's all down to the incident between him and his dad, you know.
Of course, yeah.
So, that's why he's doing it. Maybe that's what he thinks. But me looking at him, thinking, well, that has to be an influence, you know.
So he doesn't let things go easy then.
No, he was. I know that at times when he felt, even when he was in the dressing room, if he felt that he'd been maligned by other players, he wouldn't speak to them. And he wouldn't speak to them for months on end, not just like on a daily basis, which in a way was something to be admired, that you could have that discipline, not even to say good morning to them. Yeah, you tolerate him training and that, playing against them, and then playing the games with them, but not even say good morning to them because he felt.
That's a very much an Alex Ferguson trait there, isn't there?
Aye. There could be, that single, that's very blinkered kind of idea about at times that you're absolutely right, and nobody is going to convince you you're wrong, even though maybe inside you actually think, well, they're never going to admit it, for whatever reason, you know.
Talking of books, which we are, your most recent book is called Stop Shitting Yourself. So is it a guide to combating bowel dysfunction?
Well, it was originally categorized by Amazon in medical conditions. It genuinely was. I don't know whether it must be AI that does it. But, like when it's available for pre-order, like a couple of months before it came out, I've searched it, see if they've put it up there yet, and it was in medical conditions, bowel conditions category. Number 4 seller in bowel conditions category. But yeah, I mean, I've started writing over the last sort of 6 years more about mental health and try and sort of bring my own personal experiences into that. And the first book was called Sort Your Head Out, and that was pretty much memoir driven, but it went down well. So the publisher wanted a follow up quite quickly. And I wanted to sort of look at anxiety in particular and worry, and sort of try to, again, draw on my own experiences of that, both big and small. So the big things, but also just like the niggles that kind of eat away at you every day without you even noticing until suddenly you're having some sort of meltdown or whatever. Yeah, and look at the sort of categories that generally, all my books are really aimed at blokes. And to be honest, they're aimed at, I hope anyone will be able to read and enjoy them, but they're really kind of aimed at the sort of demographic who I grew up around, and that also I've made most of my content aimed for, whether that be when I was in magazines or working at TalkSport or in TV and comedy. All things had a sort of a, let's say, a laddiness about them. And I knew that blokes who might be from working class backgrounds, who liked football, who liked going to the pub, who grew up in the same environment as me, very often the ones that are struggling the most. In fact, the stats back that up. It wasn't just my instinct, but the ones who felt least able to involve themselves in discussions about things around mental health. Because I found that a lot of the discussions around mental health to be quite feminized, quite middle class, and quite... and sometimes just sort of a bit overly earnest, like, sort of like pussyfooting around terms and, making a lot of blokes that I was trying to talk to just feel uncomfortable or patronised. So I tried to just, you can see it in the titles of the books, but just to approach this stuff with a lightness of touch that I think might be more disarming to the sort of blokes I'm trying to reach, who I often think the sort of blokes who are most in need of help.
Yeah, so it's no coincidence then, because I was going to say you've almost seen this sort of in the whole cycle of things. You were obviously working in sort of, dare I say, lads mags in the 90s.
Yeah.
And now we're in a very much a different era. I worked in FHM just down the corridor, but in the sort of mid 90s. I know how those environments were and how it worked, and now it's a very different world. So do you think you're sort of tapping into that age group or that demographic of guys, maybe our sort of age, that would have almost turned their nose up at that kind of conversation back in... That's
exactly it. I got to my 40s and I was like... In my late 30s, I was drinking very heavily to the extent that I thought this is really having a negative impact on various areas of my life, but I really struggled to cut down. So in the end, I was like really hitting what I thought was pretty much a crisis in my life, and I didn't know what to do. So in the end, cut a very long story short, I quit. I knocked it on the head. And one of the things that helped me do that was seeing a therapist who was a former addict herself, who I could talk to quite honestly, share experiences with. She was a football fan herself. The fact that she was a very highly qualified therapist who also would swear and laugh and take the piss even, like in sessions, I was like, my mind was blown by that, because I thought any therapy would be me sat on a couch with some weird Sigmund Freud bloke asking me if I fancied my mum, right? And that's put me right off any of that stuff. And then suddenly I was like, okay, you can talk about this stuff in a way that isn't necessarily completely alien. But, I saw a lot of other guys from my generations going through the same thing. I realised that, that generation that was sort of maybe born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, one thing I say about it is that, like, and all the sort of lad mag era and all of that, it's like we took nothing seriously, especially ourselves, right? So everything was about irreverence. It's why so often we are bewildered by our children now, who are Gen Zers or whatever, because they're so serious and they seem so serious and earnest about everything, and they get the ump about everything, and every single word they use has to be really considered. And, I'm not anti all of that, but it's so the opposite of how we grew up, because the whole currency amongst our generation was taking the piss and never being seen to take yourself seriously. And almost the most most self-important thing you could do would be to start kind of expressing your own pain or feelings or anything like that, because that would suggest that you took yourself like profoundly seriously, and it's sort of embarrassing and cringeworthy. But of course, we're all human beings. So the truth is we all do feel pain and hurt and go through difficult times. But if you're that hell-bent, or you're that conditioned culturally to hide it from everyone around you, it doesn't mean that it's not there. And in many cases, certainly in mine, you're dealing with it in other ways. So numbing it out, drugs, alcohol, and other toxic behaviours, because I'd never been able to confront it in any other way. So when I started confronting it, I just relaxed about it, started normalising those kind of conversations, and realised they didn't have to be very self-important or navel-gazing, but you could admit when you were feeling shit, you know. And then I started a podcast about it and started trying to interview blokes who, I mean, for instance, Irving Welsh has been on it. I've had a few ex-West Ham players come on it, a few West Ham hooligans come on it. I've had people like Sean Ryder and other pop stars, blokes who I grew up admiring, but who are from a similar generation where you would think would never open up about this stuff, but have reached an age and a level of self-awareness where they think, you know what? You don't have to just become some sort of sandal-wearing hippie weirdo to be in touch a little bit with your own feelings. You can still be a bit of a laugh. You can still be one of the lads, but also take a little bit better care of your own feelings and mental health.
Yeah, you must feel pretty pleased with the progress then that we've all made. I mean, we mentioned Stan Collymore there back in the, what was it, mid-late 90s, and we all kind of not laughed at him, but it found it all a bit odd that he felt that way, and we probably raised an eyebrow, whereas Mark says that wouldn't be the case now. So you must feel pretty good about the progress we've made and the part you've played in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I started doing this stuff like in 2018, so it's not like I don't regard myself as a big pioneer. I probably would have found it harder to do had I been doing it 10 years earlier. You know, there was already, the ground had been set somewhat. People were opening up a lot more about mental health. And the thing about this mental health stuff is that a lot of the advice or insights that are, you know, bandied about in the media or in conversation, it's very similar. Like you could study Buddhism, or you could listen to bloody Fern Cotton's podcast or anything, or you could go and see a shrink. A lot of the stuff you're going to hear from everyone is the same. The thing that changes is the language and the tone in which these things are expressed, right? And so I was certainly not saying anything new about mental health. You know, these are things that you can hear anywhere, which is just be aware of yourself, take care of yourself, you know, do certain things to make sure that you don't burn out or hit a crisis. But if you do, here are the things that will help. This is stuff you could hear from anyone. I was just saying it in my own tone of voice, my own language, in a way that other blokes like me could relate to. And so my idea is that there needs to be as many different voices as possible, because I'm speaking to one particular demographic of men who are broadly like me. But you need all different, you know, genders and tones of voice expressing these same lessons so it gets out there. Because if you can find someone that you can relate to, you think, oh, he's a bloke like me. Like Stephen Fry was one of the first celebrities who started talking openly about his mental health. And I like Stephen Fry's work and all that, but I think, well, he's not like me. You know, he can say that stuff, but this is a bloke from a totally different background, with a totally different life experience to my own. So fair play to him, but I can't quite relate, or I couldn't be as open as him. But if you find someone and you think, oh yeah, he's kind of similar to me in his upbringing, in his cultural references, in the, you know, his sense of humour or his experience of the world, and yet he has got the balls to open up and be honest about his own vulnerabilities and talk about mental health, then there's something about that you catch on to and you kind of really relate to, and it encourages you to do the same. And then when you do it, you're passing that on to other people. So yeah, so I'm happy to see more and more blokes, the sort of blokes who've come on my podcast and you know, who are suddenly so kind of, you know, willing and able to just tell the truth about themselves. And I don't expect everyone to do that, because not everyone finds it easy. I don't think blokes are obliged to do that, by the way. Sometimes I think there's too much pressure. Like, you got to talk about how you're feeling. You got to reach out. right? It's like, well, maybe some people don't want to. Maybe they hate that idea, and that, or they just can't, or that's fine too. But I also, if you can, and you're all right about it, do it. The other thing I found when I started doing it, I was very nervous for everyone would take the piss, and the response I've always had from talking about these kind of issues has been nothing but positive. So that's nice.
Brian, is that something that you've noticed in the footballing world? At times must have changed, like lads mags. I imagine the football changing room has changed a lot.
Yeah, but it was all those magazines were on the bus at away games, so I didn't buy them, but I would look at them and all that, and it would. I would always be amused what bits they'd be interested in, and everybody's interested in different bits. I used to just look at them I read them because it's always good to have an idea of what was happening. But sometimes there would be some kind of I mainly like films and music, Sam, sorry, or video games at the time. So there might be something in them, that would be relevant to what I was doing, but it's something I was interested to see what other people were doing, what they would be talking about. And yeah, it would be very laddish, no doubt about that. Very, very masculine and all macho and all that kind of thing. But that really they're not all like that, because you spend such an awful long period of time with them. But again, like you referenced earlier on, it was all about taking the piss, and who was good at that, So I think that even before that, because it was the same as you growing up, it was the same thing, it was about laughing, enjoying yourself, because probably because of austerity, really, you had those things, you played football, you watched a bit of football, it's a big television, to be interested, if you get some access to music, it'd be brilliant. The rest of the time it'd be like, it'd be banter between people, and that you had older brothers, I was the oldest, so I kind of learned that from people at school and some older people, and then when you get involved in the football environment, it's all about that, So when I was in full-time environment at 16 years of age, when I went to Aston Villa, they didn't look at me or the other ones that went in at 16 years of age of kids that had just come out of secondary school. They were treating you as if you had been playing professional football for 10 years. And it was the same thing, and there was nothing hidden about it, It was exactly so. If you went into the reserve team dressing room or the first team dressing room, they would be on you, and also it was quite, again, going back to the banter, watching them. Sometimes you were more in the first team dressing room with the younger, they tended to ignore you, because they were quite a distance away from being a 16-year-old, or maybe more respectful of what it is. But it was great listening to all of that. And then when you're amongst your own group, that's what you did. You just found ways of just taking the piss out of each other as a kind of barrier, I suppose, to what life was all about, But then football, even then, is within that bit is not real life,
Yeah.
The banter stuff and all that maybe, but the actual, so during the week stuff is the same as working anywhere else, imagine, but the performance part of it is totally different. You're going into places where there's some of the supporters really want you to do well, and obviously the other supporters want you to do badly, and you're under probably a lot of pressure. How you deal with that pressure is probably down to each of the individual. But looking back on all those kind of things, even then, you would have always welcomed the opportunity to be able to speak about something at some point. Now, you probably wouldn't want any of your teammates to find out about it because they were taking the piss out of you, because I remember an incident about Steve Hodges. You used to have roommates, right? So so when you're away trips, you're in a room with a fucking complete stranger, really, so basically you're living with a complete stranger for a day or a night, right? Really, in terms you get to see them, whether do they brush their teeth or not, do they want a cup of tea at night, or do they want to watch the television, all these different things. Like, what did they talk about? Did they snort? Anyway, all these things. And Steve Hodges had said to one of his colleagues when he was in England that he felt a bit depressed, and his colleague told the other players, he said, "I'll kind of tell you in confidence, I feel a bit depressed," and telling you in confidence didn't marry with football and footballers, so he told everybody else, and they just ripped the piss out of him, And I don't know whether Steve Hodges did or subsequently has had, but the beauty of the things now is that, as I've said many times before, it's okay not to be okay, and I think the messages are continuing to do that throughout society now, that you know, that you look back at your things that, like we just saying anything, but I heard you mention before when I was, I think I was about 5 or 6, and I went to my grand's funeral, and my cousin was, he was a year older than me, but he was a lad, and he was tears flooding out his face. And I remember my dad saying to me, I'm 5 or 6, my dad said to me, men don't cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same moment, you know, and I was like, that's your dad. If that's your dad telling you that, well, that must be the case, you know, and that was it for me for 30 years.
But
until you lost the league at West Ham.
but the mental
I never cried at those moments, no.
I think the mental resilience that you had to have, especially in that era, so both in the changing room where it's brutal. I mean, some of the things, when I worked with ex-pros, most of whom are from your generation at TalkSport, some of the stories they told me off air were like, I mean, and I feel that I grew up in a pretty laddie, all-male environment. My house was like all older bros, like I say, but some of the stuff that I heard about the bullying as well, like when you're young, by some of the older lads and that. And then obviously the intense experience of playing in front of huge crowds and the hatred that you get directed at you and the intensity. I always thought, you know, there's physical ability, technical skill, but without the mental resilience, you could have the skill of Lionel Messi, but not make it as a professional footballer, right? Because you could just fall to pieces. Like, I don't know if you remember Joey Beecham, he signed for West Ham.
Yeah.
He was quite highly rated. And he'd come from, I think, Oxford United. And we spent quite a lot of money for the time. And he came in after a couple of weeks. He just couldn't handle it. He wanted to go home. And you know, to be fair, Harry Redknapp really threw him under the bus, a bit like John Gregory with Stan Collymore. He was like, well, I mean, you know, I don't understand the lad. He's only down the M40. Like, what's the matter with him? He says he's down in the dumps. Well, you just get on with it, don't you? And it was a sad story because I think he was a talented player.
Yeah.
But that's a crucial element, isn't it? I mean, I suppose without that mental resilience, you'd just collapse. I mean, did you see players like that who you thought had it all apart from that ability to stay strong mentally?
Yeah, well, they would have had that, and as I say, you had to develop that mentality when you come into the first team dressing room. Now, even all different, the players were all different in that first team dressing room but there was a lot, as you mentioned, there's a lot of strong personalities. But the main driving force was, particularly when you started to win things, was to continue to be successful. So we put sort of great demands on anybody that came in there to be able to perform and be part of that kind of thing. But you wanted them to show that they could be able to deal with that as well. But that was something for a lot of people would be, for me anyway, it was like learned. It was like a learned thing. So you learn from probably senior players about experiences that they'd had while they're playing things. And then also when you have experiences yourself, you know, when you have poor games or poor things, about who's going to be around about you to tell you things are all right, you know. But I certainly know for a fact, thinking back, that you would have been, that I would have welcomed the opportunity to speak to people externally from football, to be able to just say, is this normal to, I don't know, to feel anxious, for example, you know? So I was being involved with that Legends game on Saturday. So I agreed to be part of the management team for Celtic. Now, I have no idea how many people are going to turn up for this game, whether it's going to be 1 or 60,000 people. But you want everybody. I'm hoping that all the participants are going to have a good time, because it might be the last game they ever play. You know, yeah. So that was my message to those Celtic players: look, just enjoy it, but remember, I don't need to say to you, "I want to win," because that's the way it is. I can't say don't bother if you don't win, because they'll be looking at you thinking something wrong with him, you know. But
yeah.
It was make sure you enjoy the experience, because I was just saying to the lads, one of the lads came on, scored a goal, injured one of the United players who was his pal, and then walked off, and then limped off himself.
Oh,
you
my
know,
God.
and it may well be, I don't know.
A roller coaster.
I know.
Maybe he heard it was a free bar.
But the thing for me, pre-game, not so much pre-game, the night before, and I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, fretting about this game on Saturday.
Wow.
Which was just basically a charity game that you know people are going to turn up to, and you know that people are going to. But I woke up with this. It's in my mind, hoping that it's going to be the best experience. Not for me, because I've got forgotten so many good. I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I'm kind of hoping that they're going to enjoy it, and that they'll see it. And it worked out okay. But then I'm thinking, why am I feeling? Maybe that's just whether you're conditioned to be, but about the whole thing, you may well be anxious or nervous about. I was nervous before every single game I played. Nervous, really nervous, irrespective of what it was. As soon as the whistle went, I got into it, and everyone was fine. But maybe I suppose there could be a close relationship between being nervous and anxious, So. Previously on Life with Brian.
You get to that point where you think, am I just showing off and being a real arsehole here? Just being greedy.
By being good.
That's what happened with Whistle Test. People used to then meet up at the pub the following evening or that weekend to talk about the bands they'd seen on the show.
And the old boy just stood up and went, Stephen McManus, you'd be better off with Michelle McManus in there right now.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got to the stage of the show where we break open the quiz barrel and scrape the bottom for another helping of tenuous trivia for Brian and our guest to tussle over. This one is called Hack of the Net, and here's why. Sam's most recent book is called Stop Shitting Yourself. So we're giving you both 5 names each, some of which are footballers, while some are not. And those names all contain references to excrement in some form or another. You'll get those 5 goes each, like a penalty shootout. And if you think the person is a footballer, say first touch. But if you think they're an imposter, please say first flush. Both got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Brian, you were quite upset with me last time we did this. So just before we go,
I'm not. Oh, yeah, I'm not upset all the time about it because it's just
okay.
You just try to find ways to annoy me by me getting beat. So that's all right.
Okay, well,
it's most important that the guests have a pleasant experience. I'll go and talk to somebody else after it's finished. Don't I?
As our guest, Sam, you get the honour of going first, and you start with Raphael Scheidt.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be the first one as well.
Well, you did doing your work.
First touch.
Yes,
is Brazilian, played for Celtic.
Well, Brian gave that away.
He did.
And they will still blame me if he loses.
Yeah,
Brazilian. I couldn't. That was the first thing that came into my head. It's got to be
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
5 million Celtic people. I don't think ever played.
No, Scheidt by name, Scheidt by nature. He cost Celtic the princely sum of 5 million back in '99. He made just a handful of appearances in Scotland before being packed off back to Brazil. So a nice, easy one straight down the middle there for Sam to take a 1-0 lead.
As always, I try not to look at these before we do them. Mark spends hours looking at them, and I try not to look at them so they're fresh to me, and it always makes me laugh. So this one, Jockey, your first one is Jobby Justin.
Oh, first touch.
Yeah, I like the way you said that with your eyes closed, just like you used to take your penalties.
It's so fucking ridiculous that nobody would know really outside certain countries that Jobby is a Jobby.
Yeah.
So Jobby Justin, his first touch of true. Yeah. That's when Jobby is an Indian striker currently playing for Diamond Harbour in the I-League. He's also won 3 caps for India.
So I'm fascinated by the research for these questions. You type in a euphemism for excrement and
Mark
then
spends
football
hours.
and search.
Mark spends hours doing these. I mean,
AI has been a godsend to you, Mark.
You said you might not have a script for your podcast, Sam, but God, Mark spends hours on these things.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, your second one is Do Hung Dung.
Do Hung Dung. I'm going to say first touch again.
Dung is indeed a player. Currently playing for Vietnamese club side Hanoi and has been, or maybe still is, the captain of the Vietnam national side. So there you go. 2-1.
Oh, he's a legend.
Okay, Brian, I'll try and keep a straight face with this one. You follow up with Sam Poo.
Sam.
I'm going for first flush.
And you'd be right too. Pooh is a 19th century Chinese bushranger or outlaw who caused havoc in the outback of Australia before his capture and hanging in 1865.
Wow. That might be the first time ever we've got like this far into the competition with everybody getting 100%. So,
2-2 is pretty tense.
Yeah.
Well, we're already
not that Sam's counting.
No. So we're already at the third spot kick, Sam, and it's Christian Stool.
First flash.
Oh, we've got our first miss.
Oh,
Stool is a retired midfielder who played for regional side VfL Bremen in Germany until 2013, where it said he was able to pass quite freely.
I'm already worried now because I'm starting to look ahead at this next one and the pronunciation is worrying me. So, Brian, your number 3 is in fact number 2. Obon Marsh Nambatu.
Obon Marsh
Number 2.
Number 2, right, okay. Oh my God.
Even Mark's laughing at his own joke.
First touch.
Well, it's false. Mark's done you. Obon Marsh number 2 is in fact not a person at all, but a supermarket on the Pacific island of Vanuatu.
Vanuatu. Okay, so
Mark, this
good. Okay, we're still level then at 2-2. Okay, Sam, we're getting to the business end of the quiz now, and your penultimate spot kick is Crosby Loggins.
First flash.
Yes. So back in front there. Singer-songwriter Crosby Loggins is the eldest son of Grammy-winning artist Kenny Loggins, who had substantial hits in the 80s from the Footloose and Top Gun soundtracks. And he also released a children's album aptly named Return to Pooh Corner in 1994.
Wow. I'll check that out. I'm a big Loggins fan.
Can we have a score check, please, referee?
Yes. Sam's 3-2 ahead.
Okay. Chucky, your fourth one is Mario Turdo.
First touch.
Yeah. Didn't wait. You didn't let it phase. You just stood up and whacked it. Turdo was a journeyman striker who plied his trade to little effect both in his native Argentina and for a short time in France and Spain before calling it a day in 2009.
Right, okay, so it's 3-3. And Sam, your fifth and final one is Thomas Crapper.
Oh, first touch.
No, Crapper is not a player.
Toilets.
Is he the one who invented the toilet?
Yeah, well, he's wrongly attributed as being the inventor of the toilet, when in fact he merely had a few patents that led to improvements to the modern day Kazi. The word crap was originally linked to shit, is also not down to him. It is of Middle English origin. So you've left the door open. You've left the privy door open to Brian to pinch this.
Am I allowed to try and put him off now by waving my arms around?
Yeah.
The question will put me off, Sam. You don't need to.
Okay, I'm trying to read this one very carefully, just so Brian doesn't accuse me of, diddling him. Brian, you're bringing up the rear with doo-doo.
First flush.
Brian, you had the chance and you missed it. It's first touch, it's true.
Oh.
There are a number of footballing doo-doos to choose from here. So I'll say this one is a diminutive Brazilian playmaker who had a long and distinguished career, most notably at Palmeiras. So I think we finished at 3-3.
So there's no sudden death?
No, God, no. We would
stay all day.
We've been there before.
It would be like that Grimsby game recently. We would be here all day. So.
And Mark doesn't have the patience to go for sudden death.
No.
Fair enough. We'll just shake hands on that then, Brian, and call it quits.
There's not many draws, Sam. So,
respect the point. That's
Brian would take a point.
Used to say.
Brian would take a point, definitely.
Well, before we sign off, there's enough time for us to squeeze our Focus On feature in, our version of the old Shoot magazine interviews of yesteryear, where we ask our guests to give away just a few more pieces of themselves before they leave us. This episode's questions are taken from the 1982 interview done with one of Top Flight Time Machine's greatest subjects, Kevin Keegan, for whom Sam and Andy dedicated a whole series of podcasts to hilariously dissecting his autobiography. I'll get your answers to these, please, Sam, but I will reveal some of King Kev's responses too. I'm sure you'll have your take on them, particularly if you imagine his answers while doing your impression of him. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Your full name?
Samuel Brendan Delaney.
Well, I wasn't actually aware that Double K's first name is actually Joseph. Yeah. Birthplace and date?
Hammersmith, 16th of April 1975.
And height?
6'2".
Married?
Yes.
Kevin Keegan obviously slipped in there that he was married very happily to Jean.
Jean. Of course, Jean. Heckin' fuck, Jean. Larry McMenemy's on the phone.
Home?
London.
Kevin really sort of wanted to slip this in. He said that he had a house in Hampshire with a large garden, swimming pool, and stables.
Fucking hell, calm down, Kevin.
Never want to be modest.
Yeah. Underfloor heating, the lot. 4 toilets. I've never even been in one of them. Wow.
Nickname?
Well, on the podcast, I have a number of nicknames. Probably the most popular one is Fish Cake, which is because I was once bullied in a chippy by some older lads for ordering a fish cake with my chips.
Keegan gave away that he was called Andy at Liverpool. Not sure why.
Right.
Mighty Mouse at Hamburg, and he wasn't aware of any at the time at Newcastle.
Okay, well, we called him the Electric Mouse in our deep dive. I can't quite remember why. I think we just thought he behaved as if he ran on electricity.
Favorite player?
Oh, my favorite player ever?
Yeah.
Is Julian Dix.
Keegan's was slightly further up the football pecking order. His was Johan Cruyff because he's playing for Feyenoord and still winning things. And I think that's probably more about Kevin Keegan trying to insist that even though he was at Newcastle at that point and near the end of his career, that he was also still playing and winning things, capable of winning things.
I think it's a bit unfair for you to say that there was a huge disparity in their relative positions on the footballing pecking order, but I'll leave that.
Biggest disappointment?
The biggest disappointment? Oh my God, what a question. Well, I'll talk about in football terms, and it would be Steven Gerrard scoring in the last second of injury time in the 2006 FA Cup final.
Yeah, as an Everton fan, I absolutely feel your pain with that one.
Yeah.
Keegan's biggest disappointment was being out injured for most of the 1982 World Cup finals.
Oh, yeah. And we were talking about this the other day. One of the things, what he did, he had a bad back, but he didn't trust the England physio. So he disguised himself. He put on like a disguise as like an old woman or something and drove all the way from Seville to Hamburg behind Ron Greenwood's back so he could see his own German chiropractor. Dr. Hans. And then drove back again in disguise so no one would notice it was him.
Of course,
can't be good for in the long run, however good this German osteopath was or chiropractor was, there's no way that length of journey in a car is going to be good for your back.
No, exactly. Especially not in those early 80s cars like a Austin Princess or an Allegro.
Exactly. It would have been a nightmare.
Yeah. Favorite show business stars?
Show business stars. I like Danny Dyer because he's a West Ham fan and he single-handedly has kept Jarrod Bowen at our club because we all know Jarrod Bowen should basically be playing in the Champions League, and we all as West Ham fans almost feel a bit sorry for him that he's stuck at our place, and it's entirely because he's scared of his father-in-law. So I'm going to go for Danny Dyer.
Keegan's were Rod Stewart, Elton John, and Olivia Newton-John.
Oh, yeah. Good choices.
But he also throws in, I've always been a fan of the Moody Blues.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay. And finally, immediate and future ambitions.
My immediate ambition is, once I finish this chat with you, I am going to bake a chocolate cake. Little insight to my glamorous midweek lifestyle there. I'm looking forward to that. And my future ambitions, I don't know, to carry on just sort of not having to have a proper job for as long as possible.
And Keegan's answers there were to help put Newcastle back in the first division where they belong, which of course he did achieve. And then after that, he said, and when I finish, I want to see the world with my family.
I thought you were saying, when I finish, I want to fly away from St James's Park in a helicopter that I've arranged for myself, which is what he did.
Yeah.
his uncontrollable ego.
Yeah. Okay, so it's time to knock this nonsense on the head once again. So it's a big thanks, first of all, to you, Sam, for joining us. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you all and an honour. Cheers, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Before you go, Sam, please remind everyone about where they can get hold of Top Flight Time Machine and also about the book Stop Shitting Yourself.
Stop Shitting Yourself is available on Amazon and all good bookshops now. In Kindle and audio book read by me, and of course normal book. And Top Flight Time Machine you can get through all the usual pod places, iTunes, Spotify, etc. But if you want the full package, one episode every day of the week for not much more than the price of a cappuccino, then you got to find us on Patreon, where you get access to the lot.
Brilliant. Chucky and Matthew, thanks very much, lads.
No,
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
And thanks to you out there for listening. Don't forget to check us out on X and Blue Sky at Brian McClare Pod, and Instagram, which, if I've remembered this correctly for once, is at Life with Brian Pod. Subscribe to Life with Brian on your preferred podcast platform, if you'd be so kind. That way you'll get all our episodes in your phone or device, apparently. The wonders of technology, eh? Anyway, see you all next time. Cheers.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Talking politics and football. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Life with Brian.